Hello learners, I welcome you all to the fifth segment of this lecture number 52. We've been discussing about fair and equitable treatment. So before I start this segment, let me caution you in the beginning of the video itself that this is going to be a little longer video because we will look at how various tribunal has interpreted FET clause. This is outside the context of NAFTA. So there are many BITs involved. So many tribunals applied, taken a different approach with regard to interpreting fair and equitable treatment. So that is what we are going to discuss in this video. Firstly, let me start with MTD versus Chile. So this is already a case we have discussed in the 6th week of the course, and you are very well versed with the facts of the case. Here also the investor had borrowed a favorable provision from Chile, Croatia BIT and Chile, Denmark BIT. Actual BIT that was a relevant treaty for this dispute was Chile, Malaysia. So Malaysian investor who had filed a case against Chile referred to other treaties signed by Chile, and therefore the interpretation of FET clause was questioned in this particular. So as we had already mentioned in the 6th week, the decision was a compromise, right? So 50% of the damages had to be borne by the investor itself, but it is very interesting for us to understand how the tribunal looked at or decided on the issue of interpreting FET clause. So when we look at the interpretation of FET clause in MTD versus Chile, the tribunal looked at the ordinary meaning of the terms, that is fair and equitable, because fair and equitable are the terms that is used in Article 3(1) of the BIT. Then the tribunal referred to the Oxford Dictionary, specifically 5th edition of the Oxford Dictionary, and then it arrived at the decision that fair and equitable means just, even-handed, unbiased, legitimate. This is what are the meanings. Then it also looked at the words that were used in Article 2.2 of the BIT, which was titled as promotion and protection of the investment. Then it also looked at the object and purpose of the BIT, wherein in the preamble the parties had expressed their desire to create favorable conditions for investment by investors of one contracting party in the territory of the other contracting party. And in the preamble it was also mentioned that there was a need for recognition of, it spoke about recognition of the need to protect investments by investors of both contracting parties and to stimulate the flow of investments and individual business initiative with a view to achieving economic prosperity in the territories of both countries, right. So this is what all were mentioned in the preamble, and it looked at other provisions and all of that. So finally, MTD tribunal stated that in terms of the BIT, the fair and equitable treatment should be understood to be a treatment in an even-handed and just manner conducive to fostering the promotion of foreign investment. So that is, it stated that the terms of FET clause would be a proactive statement because the words to promote, to create, to stimulate have been used. So they are not just the prescriptions for a passive behavior of a state or avoidance of prejudicial conduct, but rather the tribunal will look at that as a proactive statement. So on this basis, then the tribunal had found a violation of FET clause by looking at the provisions of other treaties through the MFN clause of Chile, Malaysia BIT as well. In the next case, in Siemens versus Argentina, here the tribunal stated that there was no reference to international law or a minimum standard in the treaty itself. So therefore, the tribunal stated that while interpreting the treaty, the tribunal will find the meaning of these terms under international law, bearing in mind their ordinary meaning, the evolution of international law and the specific context in which they were used. This is how Siemens tribunal interpreted the FET clause. In case of Saluka versus Czech Republic, here the tribunal again stated that fair and equitable treatment that was encompassed in Article 3.1 of the treaty was an autonomous standard, and then it stated that it should interpret that provision in the light of the object and purpose of the treaty. So, the tribunal stated that the Czech Republic, without undermining its legitimate right to take measures for the protection of the public interest, has also assumed an obligation to treat foreign investors' investment in a way that does not frustrate the investors' underlying legitimate and reasonable expectation. So, after saying this, the Saluka Tribunal stated that a foreign investor whose interests are protected under the treaty is entitled to expect that the Czech Republic will not act in a way that is manifestly inconsistent, non-transparent, unreasonable in the context of that it should not be unrelated to some rational policy, or discriminatory, that is in the context of unjustifiable distinction. So, after having due regard to all relevant circumstances. This is how Saluka Tribunal interpreted the FET clause. If we look at Marian Ungulab Tribunal, Marian Ungulab case, so here the tribunal also interpreted FET clause by saying that it will give some sort of a deference to the host state. So, even after giving deference, what it stated was, if such measures are taken for important public purpose, still the governments are required to use due diligence in the protection of foreigners and will not be excused from liability if their action has been arbitrary or discriminatory. It further stated that just because governments are accorded a considerable degree of deference regarding the regulation or administration of matters within their borders, that does not mean, and if such differences are not significant, then as far as the tribunal is concerned, unless they involve or condone arbitrariness, discriminatory behavior, lack of due process or other characteristics that shock the conscience, then it is clearly improper or discreditable, or otherwise something very blatantly defied logic or elemental fairness. That is when it will say that the FET clause is violated. If we look at Duke Energy versus Republic of Ecuador, so here the Duke Energy Tribunal stated that the stability of the legal and business environment is directly linked to the investors' justified expectation. So, the tribunal acknowledged that such expectations are an important element of fair and equitable treatment. At the same time, the tribunal stated that it is also mindful of their limitations. So, therefore, in order for an investment to be protected, the investor's expectation must be legitimate and reasonable at the time when the investor made the investment. So, the assessment of the reasonableness or legitimacy of the expectation, when the tribunal makes such an assessment, it should take into account all circumstances, not just the facts surrounding the investment, but also the political, socio-economic, cultural and historical conditions that prevail in the host state. So, in addition, it stated, the tribunal stated that the expectations must arise from the conditions that the state offered the investor, and the latter must have relied upon those offerings when deciding to invest. So, basically that the specific representation of the state must be relied on by the investor. So, this is with regard to Duke Energy Tribunal. If we look at Philip Morris versus Uruguay case, here also the tribunal had to interpret Article 3.2 of Switzerland Uruguay BIT that contained the legal standard for the FET clause. While interpreting Article 3.2, here Philip Morris Tribunal stated that each contracting party shall ensure fair and equitable treatment within its territory of the investment of the investors of the other contracting party. So, Uruguay referred to FET as a legal term of art, and then it stated that it means the minimum standard of treatment. So, I just read out Article 3.2 because you won't find minimum standard of treatment, the phrase, in the text itself. You can see it on the screen. Article 3.2 does not talk about minimum standard of treatment. So, the tribunal had to decide on Uruguay's contention whether minimum standard of treatment, even when it is absent, is something that is what meant by FET clause. So, the tribunal stated that Mere absence of any reference to the phrases like customary international law or minimum standard of treatment does not mean that the BIT creates an autonomous FET standard, and at the same time the tribunal also stated that in the absence of any additional qualifying language, the FET standard cannot be read as the treatment required by the minimum standard of treatment under international law. So, the tribunal stated that it will look at FET clause in accordance with the normal canons of treaty interpretation that we find under Article 31 and 32 of the VCLT. It is very important for us to know that the Philip Morris Tribunal stated neither answered in the affirmative nor answered in the negatory. If we look at Monday versus United States, here also we had seen that how in case of Bondi versus United States, it spoke about the fact that 1920 standard cannot be relied on. That is exactly was followed in some of the treaty arbitrations outside the NAFTA framework as well. In Jenin versus Estonia, here the tribunal stated that for the tribunal to find a FET violation, the act that is alleged to be violative of FET clause should show a willful neglect of duty and insufficiency of action falling far below international standards or even subjective bad faith. That has to be there. In case of Vivendi versus Argentina, the tribunal made a well-known comment on the significance of in conformity with the principles of international law, because some of the FET clauses use that phrase in conformity with the principles of international law. So, Vivendi tribunal stated that it sees no basis for equating principles of international law with a minimum standard of treatment. First, it stated that there should be reference to principles of international law. The reference to principles of international law itself supports a broader reading that invites consideration of a wider range of international law principles than the minimum standard alone. Secondly, the tribunal stated that the wording of Article 3 requires that the fair and equitable treatment conform to the principles of international law, but the requirement for conformity can just as readily set a floor as a ceiling on the treaty's fair and equitable treatment standard. So, the tribunal also stated that the language of the provision suggests that one should also look to contemporary principles of international law, not only to principles from almost a century ago. This is what was stated in Monday versus United States that we discussed in the previous video. If we look at RF versus Moldova, so here also the tribunal stated that the specific language that was adopted by France and Moldova in Article 3 of the treaty, which talks about fair and equitable treatment, connects the same with public international law principles. So, although the neither party, that is France or neither party had raised the question of whether this language limits the fair and equitable treatment standard to a minimum standard treatment of aliens in customary international law. Neither the French investor nor Moldova had spoken about it, but the tribunal stated that this question, except in some very specific context such as Article 1105 of NAFTA, is increasingly of historic significance as the rapidly expanding practice on FET clauses in treaties which had accelerated the development of customary international law. So, the tribunal stated that in any event it is satisfied that the fair and equitable treatment standard given in Article 3 of France-Moldova BIT is an autonomous standard. If we look at Cristalex versus Venezuela, so here also the tribunal had to interpret the FET clause in Canada-Venezuela BIT because Canada's practice of narrower FET was arguing on. On the other hand, Cristalex was arguing that the FET clause is an autonomous standard. So, what we see here is again Cristalex stated that the phrase in accordance with principles of international law that is used in Canada-Venezuela BIT cannot be read as customary international law minimum standard of treatment, as that was not explicitly mentioned in the BIT. So, Cristalex tribunal stated, it followed the Vivendi case and it stated that the international principles of broad order. And that being said, it stated that the precise content of fair and equitable treatment in this instance is we should start from, the tribunal stated that it should start from the Article 2.2 of the treaty, from the canons of treaty interpretation given in Article 31 and 32 of VCLT. So, since Venezuela is not a party to VCLT, it is undisputed that whether the rules of interpretation given under VCLT will be something that would be applicable, but the tribunal stated that even when Venezuela is not a party to VCLT, this is something undisputed. Whatever is given under Article 31 and 32 of VCLT reflects the customary international law. So, that is how Venezuela Crystal X tribunal decided it. And if we look at Rumeli versus Kazakhstan, so there the tribunal stated that the parties have rightly agreed that the fair and equitable treatment standard encompasses certain concrete principles, like the state must act in a transparent manner, the state is obliged to act in good faith, that the state's conduct cannot be arbitrary, grossly unfair, unjust, idiosyncratic, discriminatory or lacking in due process. The state must respect procedural propriety and due process. So, that is something the tribunal had agreed, and here the tribunal stated that the state should also respect investors' reasonable and legitimate expectation. That is how Rumeli tribunal had decided on the content or the scope of the FET clause. In Bayandier versus Pakistan, the tribunal stated that the principal components of FET clause are the obligation to act transparently and grant due process, to refrain from taking arbitrary or discriminatory measures, from exercising coercion, or from frustrating the investor's reasonable expectation with respect to the legal framework affecting the investment. In case of Lemur versus Ukraine case, in that case the tribunal elaborated on the components of FET standard. It stated that if it will examine if the state had failed to offer a stable and predictable legal framework, if the state made specific representations to the investor, whether due process has been denied to the investor, whether there is an absence of transparency in the legal procedure or in the actions of the state, whether there has been harassment, coercion, abuse of power or other bad faith conduct by the host state, whether any of the actions of the state can be labelled as arbitrary, discriminatory or inconsistent. So, this is how many tribunals had looked at the content of FET clause. So, what we see here is the approach of the tribunals also differed from case to case basis, and individually they have been attributing or identifying certain factors to fall within the scope of FET. So, I can safely conclude that the uncertainty with regard to the scope of FET is not just limited to NAFTA. NAFTA is where many environmental regulatory measures were challenged, and that is why we focused more on NAFTA as well. But that's the case even in terms of other distinct bilateral investment treaties as well. So, now the states are being very careful about drafting the FET provision itself, and then the states are adopting a narrower approach to draft the FET clause, and we could see that the problem of FET clause is being addressed by the state with a very carefully using the terms that are mentioned to talk about fair and equitable treatment clause. Right. So, in the next video, we will look at how the states, or what is the suggestion. I mean, we look at Commonwealth Secretariat. Commonwealth Secretariat had suggested for using certain words, or it had given some suggestions with regard to the language of the FET clause in order to protect the legitimate regulatory space of a country. That we will discuss in the last segment of this lecture number 52. Thank you.